How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry Chapter 5. It is finally festival night, where we know things are going to go down. We just don't know what the outcome will be, what the situation will look like. We've only heard of what happens in the overall scheme of things. So I'm excited to see what happens here. Other than that, in the last episode, Shion apologized to Satoshi for her actions, and Satoshi did the same. Even so, I don't really know if he's too much in the wrong. He's got a lot going on and, well, you know, built up angst and whatever. This episode's going to be a little longer than usual, probably around an hour, because I ran out of time to record an episode for the following day, so I'll just have to kind of double up on this one. So sorry for that, but let us continue. June 20th, 1982, 8:11 p.m. Satoshi snuck out the window after supper. He heard the distant ruckus of the festival. The festival would end at 9 o'clock p.m. After the Watanagashi ceremony, there was going to be a raffle drawing. So there would be two types of people in Hinamizawa: the people who would go home for dinner and the ones who would stay until the raffle was over, either relaxing at home or staying at the festival. There were only those two patterns. On top of that, there weren't many neighbors in the vicinity of Satoshi's house. As a result, he found nobody on the streets. On that night, the small village seemed especially desolate. Satoshi knew it was going to be like this, but he would keep worrying until he saw it for himself. He was barefooted, but started running without hesitation. He felt as though he'd become a wild animal running on his bare feet. He got the impression that he could run faster than usual. Not only his running ability, his vision, his hearing, and his sense of smell. All his senses were keener, including his sixth sense. He could almost sense the presence of people in the distance, if only when crouching like an animal. It felt strange, as though he had stepped into another world. He had been feeling tense and anxious until today, battling with his own fear. But now he felt as though he had metamorphosed into a different person. June 20th, 1982, 8:37 p.m. What, do we not know how a raffle works? The festival had reached its climax. The raffle was going to start. Both the women who were dancing and those who were waiting for the raffle gathered around the altar. This was the first time they held a raffle. The planning committee to hold one from this year onward to attract more people to the festival, or decided to hold one. Did I say that? I don't know. I'm tired. At first, the prizes were things the committee members had donated, but Oryo, not appreciating how pathetic they looked, had thrown them away. Oryo took the initiative and bought a brand new TV, a washing machine, a cooling fan, and other such things for the raffle. Appliances, yeah. I worked at a place that did a raffle like that once. The committee wanted to keep it small initially, but it turned out big thanks to her. Oryo was upset because the committee members weren't enthusiastic enough, in her opinion. Some of the members thought it would be very difficult to prepare prizes of equal value the following year, so this might be the very first and last raffle. Yeah, I mean, this is the first we ever heard of one. The mayor, Kimiyoshi, was having a tough time pacifying Oryo. All of a sudden, one of the committee members burst into the tent in a rush. He looked upset, so Kimiyoshi assumed that somebody probably got hurt in an accident. Kimiyoshi made a joke to calm him down. Makino, however, still looked tense. He whispered something to Kimiyoshi. Even without hearing the exchange between Makino and Kimiyoshi, it was plain as day there was bad news.
Oryo-san, 悪い話なんだけど、いいかい？
Kimiyoshi, accompanied by Makino, moved to Orio's side and spoke in a very serious tone. Kimiyoshi whispered to her the exact same words Makino told him.
いや、参ったよな。
参るも参らもなんね。3度あっちゃんは4度あるっちゅうこっちゃな。
Oh, here we go.
お嬢さん、そりゃ笑えないや。
面白い話でもなんでもないや。面倒が増えただけっちゃね。
警察が今身元を調べてるらしい。どうも相当顔面をやられてるらしくて、身元の特定が難しそうなんだと。
No, they got ways.
顔がわからんでもおおよその想像はつくっちゃな。
え？心当たりがあるのかい？
Orio glared at Kimiyoshi and then started chuckling.
バーカが綿流しの祭りにも顔を見せん。不信心者に決まっとろうがね。ちゃんとお社様を敬って祭りに来ちょるんは。そんな目には合わなんとよ。
Oh yeah, of course, that's how it works. Orio kept laughing. Kimiyoshi and Makino didn't know how to react to that. June 20th, 1982, 9:04 p.m.
しかし、こりゃ無残なもんっすね。
クマちゃん、死に方ってのは本人が望んだものでない限り、どんなでも無残なもんです。
Did this guy ever have a sprite before? I can't remember.
お悔やみ申し上げちゃいますよ。そっちどう？ポッケの中身とか個人が特定できそうなものは？
The forensic investigators, shook their heads.
サンダル履きで服装もラフ。近くにお住まいの方でしょうね。服装の特徴から周辺に聞き込みをすればすぐに割れそうっすね。
それしかないな。課長からこの山一口さしてかかりそうだからって脅されてます。その辺注意してくださいよ。
了解っす。
Kumagae gathered some officers and gave them directions.
入江先生が到着しました。先生、あそこです。
A young doctor got out of his car and headed in the victim's direction.
どうも、遅れて申し訳ありません。抽選会の手伝いの最中だったもので。
先生、今日の祭りでだいぶ飲んでたでしょう。アルコール本当に抜けてます？後で風船でも膨らましてもらっちゃおうかな。
ご安心を。運転はスタッフに代わってもらってますので。
そりゃ卒がない。おい、先生通してあげて。
There was an area cordoned off with blue plastic sheets. An officer rolled up the sheet and let Ueshi and Irie pass. The forensic people were taking photos from many different angles. The blood spatters and the bloody sandals were left untouched, marked with chalk and indicated with small alphabetized plates.
こういうものは見慣れませんね。
Irie took out a handkerchief and covered his nose.
匂いがダメな時は口呼吸にするんですよ。まあこういう匂いは目でも嗅げちゃうかな。ね。
The body appeared to be that of a middle-aged woman. It was soaked in blood. It looked like a middle-aged woman because of the hair and what she was wearing. The reason why no one could be certain it was a middle-aged woman was because its face was completely pulverized.
ひどい。
十中八九怨恨の線でしょうな。
Well, no shit.
血痕とサンダル裏から見てここで殺したのは間違いないでしょう。でも見ての通りここは人通りが少ないと言ったって往来のど真ん中です。ここで頭部がひしゃげるまで殴り続けたってのはちょいとまともな話じゃないですからね。でね、ほら腕とか見てみてください。
Ueshi put on latex gloves and lifted the corpse's arm.
ん？ 腕は綺麗なもんでしょ
それはつまり腕で防いだとか抵抗したとかそういう痕跡がないという意味ですね。
さすが高学歴。仏さんはおそらく最初の一撃で脳震盪かなんかで気絶したんじゃないかと思うんです。で、星は確実に殺した手応えを得るためにさらに打撃を加えた。さらに言えば仏さんはその時うつ伏せに倒れたように思うんですよね。ねえ、服の汚れ具合からの勘ですが。
遺体は仰向けですね。
星は後頭部を散々潰して明らかに頭蓋骨が砕けてる手応えを得ているにもかかわらずわざわざ顔面を潰してるんじゃないかと思うんですよ。
Irie looked like he was going to throw up, both because of the putrid smell and Ushi's reasoning.
遺体の顔面を殴るってのは私の経験じゃかなり怨恨の線が強いです。それもだいぶ濃厚な濃密なね。ってことはつまり星は仏のかなり近辺にいるのは間違いないかと。
私を呼んだのが救命活動ではないということはよくわかりました。
先生、この人が誰かわかりますかね。わかれば聞き込みの手間がだいぶ省けるんですがね。
Irie looked at the body once again. He looked away quickly and thought. Then after a while, Irie left the investigation area without saying anything.
すみません。私にはわかりかねます。
本当に？
She smirked and looked into Irie's eyes, as though Irie was hiding something.
別に隠してなんかいません。
先生もアルコールがまだ抜けきってないだけですよ。頭が冴えたら思い出すかもしれません。思い出したら教えてくださいね。
She tapped Irie on the back. The doctor, saying that he wanted some fresh air, left the scene. Kumagai returned.
おいさん、課長から無線です。1号車の無線っす。
入江の先生、ごまかしたな。いえ、こっちの話。仏の聞き込み急いでください。ほぼ間違いなくこの近くにお住まいです。
June 20th, 1982, 9:39 p.m.
おいさん、連れてきました。
どうも。こんな夜更けに申し訳ありませんね。
Satoshi?
明日も学校なのに本当に申し訳ないです。
Yep.
いえ、
お父さんはどちらへ？
うちの寄付はあまり帰ってきませんので。
ほう、いつ頃から？最後に帰ってきたのはいつ？
さあ、義母と喧嘩しているのを聞く限りは、沖宮でどこかのキャバレーの人と同棲してるとかなんとか。最後に会ったのはあまり覚えてないんですけど、先々週ぐらいだったかもしれません。
お父さんの連絡先はわかります？
いえ。
キャバレーの人と同居してるって言いましたよね。なんてお店かわかります？
いえ、沖宮のどこかにあるとしか知りません。
お父さんの名前は？
北条哲平です。
Ushi signaled Kumagai with his chin, who nodded while taking notes.
お父さんとお母さんはあまり仲良くなかったですか？
程度の度合いはわかりませんが、よくはなかったと思います。
率直に聞いて申し訳ないですけど、お母さんに恨みを持っていた人間とか知っていたら教えてほしいんですがね。
Oh, you're looking at him.
よくわからないです。
そうですか。 じゃあもしも思い出したらでいいので、その時は教えてくださいね。これ私の名刺です。ここに電話番号ありますので。
はい。
じゃあ後日またいろいろとお話を伺うこともあるかもしれません。もしもお父さんと連絡がつきましたら、沖宮警察署の大石まで至急ご連絡をとお伝えください。くまちゃん、北条さんを自宅まで送ってあげてください。
あ、いえ、一人で帰れますから。
いえ、そんなこと言わずにぜひ送らせてくださいな。お母さんを襲った犯人がまだ近くにいる可能性があるんですよ。あなたもまた狙われない保証なんてないんですからね。
お気遣いありがとうございます。でも本当に結構ですね。
Yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna hurt him. Satoshi tried to reject the offer, but Ueshi and Kumagaya insisted. In the end, Satoshi was forced to accept. He turned around to leave, when Ueshi spoke to him as if he remembered something he'd forgotten to say.
北条さん。
はい。
大丈夫ですよ。心配しないでください。犯人はすぐに捕まりますよ。
手がかりとかあるんですか？
ありますよ。
どんなですか？
捜査上の秘密ですよ。
Oh yeah, but the fact that there were some leads that were known, oh, that's not confidential. Ordinary people might think that Ueshi was trying to cheer the poor kid up with a joke.
いえね。人を殺すってのはかなり感情の高ぶるもんなんですよ。そりゃ冷静に殺してみせるロボットみたいなのも
感情が高ぶると何かわかるんですか？
人は極限まで感情が高ぶるといろいろ体に反応が出ます。発汗とか脱毛とかね。殺人現場に犯人の毛髪が落ちているってことは割とあることなんですよ。まあここは屋外ですからね。現場が絨毯の上ってのとはだいぶ勝手が違いますが。
I'm gonna be honest, I actually never considered that.
犯人の毛髪は拾えたんですか？
さあね。鑑識の連中が大列組んでさっきから行ったり来たりしていろいろ探してます。まだ結果待ちでね。何が出るやら。
明日があるので今夜はもう帰ります。
そうなさってください。クマちゃん、送ってあげてください。
了解っす。
では北条さん、また近いうちに進展があったらお知らせしますよ。北条さんも何か思い出したりしたらぜひ教えてくださいね。憎き母の仇の逮捕に協力してまいりましょう。
The thing is that he said, let me know if you remember something, not let me know if something comes up. He's basically just giving him the breathing room to think about it or whatever he wants to put together. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. Ring-a-ding-ding. Sis called the morning after the Watanagashi festival to tell me that the curse had struck again for the 4th time. The victim was the evil aunt who was harassing Satoshi-kun and Sotoko. Satoshi-kun's suffering should be over now, since the problem was with Sotoko and their aunt's relationship to begin with. Maybe I should have celebrated, but I wasn't in the mood for some reason.
犯人ってもう警察は目星をつけてるのかな？
Sis went quiet when I asked that.
さあね、大石の野郎がしつこく聞き込みをして回ってるみたい。犯人は近しい人間に違いないと思ってるようだね。
Being identical twins, Sis and I think very much alike. If I suspected Satoshi-kun of being the murderer, so would she. Because of this, I didn't have to mention the obvious.
サトシ君って祭りの日にアリバイあります？
ああ、 どうだろう。
はあ、
I heaved a huge sigh.
バカですね。サトシ君は祭りに来ていた。そういうことでいいじゃないですか。
そうだよね。気が利かなくてごめん。
Are they trying to create an alibi? Are they trying to do the same thing that they did with Keiichi in Chapter 3? Just create this huge thing? Actually, I don't even know what the fuck happened in Chapter 3, but are they trying to create an alibi for him? Sis was stupid enough to forget to make an alibi for him, even though the murder of his aunt alone would raise enough suspicion.
じゃあ、やっぱり、サトシが？
サトシ君が殺したかどうかが問題じゃないでしょ。サトシ君が犯行の時間帯にアリバイがあったかが重要なんです。たく。
後で警察がうちに来るみたいだから、来たらサトシは祭りで一緒だったって言うよ。
お姉、取ってつけた嘘なんか何の役にも立たないです。何も手を打たなかったなら、今さら小細工しても無駄ってことです。せいぜい正直に喋ってください。お姉は芝居が下手なんだから、変に意識するとかえって勘ぐられますからね。
ごめん。
She sounded depressed. I was the one who should have been depressed, excuse me. Mion usually handles things well, but she's not too good with emergencies. I was left worried for the future of the Sonozaki family. Mion must have been embarrassed. She soon changed the subject.
シオン、最近はあまりバイトに行けてなかったでしょ。
ご検察痛み入ります。おかげさまで。
ごめん。今日は私、夜まで姿を隠してるから、バイトに出られるんじゃない？
Oh, I'm sure that'll work out fantastically. One day after the festival and all, Sis has been appearing in public places during festival preparations and whatnot. As a result, I hadn't been able to pretend to be her. I hadn't been able to go to work. As someone who had to support myself, it was a bit of a pain. To be honest, I didn't feel like working, but I couldn't afford to be sitting around either. When I locked my apartment door before leaving, the door to the next apartment over opened and Kasai appeared.
シオンさん、お出かけですか？
そんなとこです。お姉が姿を隠してくれるそうなんで、久々にバイトに出ます。笠井、暇だったらおじさんの店まで車を出してもらってもいい？
シオンさん、しばらくはバイトを控えられた方がよろしくはないですか？事件のせいで警察は園崎家界隈を監視しているようですし、あまり姿を表に出さない方がいいのではないかと思います。
お気遣いは嬉しいけど、バイトしないと食費もないわけですし。
Kasai might suggest he donate money to my cause. However, I had sworn to myself when I started living here that I wouldn't depend on Kasai. While I don't obey anyone else's rules, I stick to my own. Kasai could tell that I was adamant in my decision. So after repeating himself a couple of times as a formal procedure, he decided to give me a ride after all. Every time we went to my uncle's store by car, we stopped at this traffic light. I knew it was going to happen again, but it still irritated me. I mean, that's kind of how it is whenever you're in a city, or like a reasonably sized town. Pedestrians passed by in front of the car. I was startled to see that one of them looked like Satoshi-kun. It was him. Though I'd spoken with him on the phone just a couple of days before, it'd been a while since I saw him last.
笠井、悪いけどおじさんに、やっぱ今日のバイトは行けなくなったって伝えてくれる？私、ここで降ります。
え？シオンさん。
Kasai looked taken aback, but I got out of the car regardless. Ah, how love does weird things. Or just how the Sonozakis? What am I on tonight? The Sonozakis do some weird things. Shion, probably more so than ever. The light turned green. The car behind him honked while Kasai was shouting at me, so he had to start moving. Satoshi-kun was on his bike, but he was going really slowly. I caught up with him in a flash and tapped him on the back.
ハロロー。沖宮で会うなんて奇遇ですね、サトシ君。
If I talked to him with a smile, he might smile back. So I smiled as brightly as I could.
Mion.
He looked tired as always, but as I could tell, he was trying to smile back. My worries... Oh, excuse me. suddenly disappeared. I was certain I looked happy. I was aware of that myself, so it must have been obvious to Satoshi-kun.
何があったか知らないけど、ミオンが楽しそうだね。
ええ、楽しいですよ。サトシ君の機嫌が良さそうなので、私も釣られて機嫌が良くなっただけです。
When I teased him, he looked a bit embarrassed. It was like we were back in the good old days. I felt even happier than before.
サトシ君こそ、何かあったんですか？何か機嫌が良くなるようないいことがありましたか？
いいことなんかないよ。おばさんが亡くなって、警察とかご近所とか、いろいろ大変だよ。
I might have asked something dumb. He seemed to be okay with it though. He'd frowned a bit at first, but Satoshi-kun continued smiling gently. He looked worn out but satisfied, like he had accomplished something great. Oh, I wonder what he accomplished. That was the mood I sensed from him. So I was convinced. The one who killed that wicked aunt who tormented Soroko was him. I had absolutely no proof, but I knew it intuitively. So I omitted all those questions. I knew Satoshi-kun's motive for killing his aunt, and how badly he was driven into a corner. I knew the environment and the situation he was in, and I knew Satoshi-kun's feelings. I knew all of it. So I omitted all those questions. I wanted to celebrate his release from that curse, so I smiled like nothing was different as I asked.
サトシ君はどこかへお出かけですか？あ、バイトかな？
正解。その前に寄り道なんだけどね。
寄り道？
毎日ちゃんとショーケースにあるのを確認しないとなんだか不安で。
That conversation reminded me. The reason he started his part-time job was to buy Soroko a huge teddy bear. It was being sold at the toy store just down the street. I recalled that the teddy bear was very expensive, yeah, apparently $1,000. Sotoko's birthday was right after the festival. I wasn't sure what day though. Wait, didn't he say he quit his job? Maybe he was going to greet his ex-coworkers and clean out his locker or something? Either way, he'd be completely free very soon. Maybe he hadn't been paid yet, and that's why he wanted to check if they still had the teddy bear. Maybe he was only getting paid on Sotoko's birthday. When we got near the toy store, he rushed to the display window. He looked relieved that it hadn't been sold yet.
よかったよかった。大丈夫。ちゃんとあるよ。
買えるだけのお金は稼げてるわけですよね。なら予約とかしちゃえばいいのに。
He probably hadn't thought of that. He really did need someone to look after him. I looked into the display window over his shoulder. The teddy bear wasn't that cute in my opinion. It looked huge and cramped in the middle of the store's showcase. Really, it looked more like a display model than an item for sale.
値札がついてないけど、これ本当に売り物なんですか？これ一体いくらするんです？
売り物なのは確認したから間違いないよ。
値段は？予算は大丈夫？
大丈夫だよ。ちゃんと確認してあるよ。
Satoshi-kun thought I was teasing him again. He pouted and looked a little sulky. Excuse me.
予算が大丈夫なら問題ないじゃないですか。なら予約しちゃいましょう。その方がサトシ君も心の荷が下りていいでしょうしね。
We entered the store and looked for a clerk.
誰もいないのかな。
そりゃ好都合です。サトシ君、お給料日を待たずにぬいぐるみが手に入るかもですね。
ダメだよミオン。泥棒はいけないよ。
冗談ですって。軽く受け流してほしかったんだけどな。ひょっとして私が盗っ人の真似を平気でできる女だと思ってます？
あ、ごめん。
Satoshi-kun smiled apologetically. I puffed up my cheeks to tease him. It had really been a while since the last time we did this. In between those times, many undesirable things happened that I wanted to forget. But now I felt as though all those things simply vanished into the air around us. I found an old person napping in the back. He must be the clerk, I thought. He looked to be fast asleep.
お店の方ですよね。
I poked his shoulder, but he didn't look like he was going to wake up. When I did that, a middle-aged woman wearing an apron came in.
おじいちゃん、店番頼んだのにすっかり眠りしちゃって。お客さん来てるってのにもうごめんなさいね。うちのおじいちゃんもすっかりボケちゃって。
The middle-aged woman shook the old man awake and told him to go back to the living room. She went to the cash register after that.
お恥ずかしいところ見せちゃってごめんなさいね。何かお買い上げ？
買うんじゃなくて予約なんですけど、あのショーケースの中の一番大きいぬいぐるみなんですけど。
あれ？いいの？値札見た？かなり高いけどお小遣い。
はい、ギリギリ足りるはずです。
もうすぐバイトのお給料が入るそうなので、それまで予約したいんですけど。
The woman looked a bit hesitant at first, but she eventually wrote down Satoshi-kun's name and accepted the reservation. Satoshi-kun received a slip of paper.
ね、これでもう誰かに先に買われちゃう心配はもう必要ありません。
うん、お給料がもらえるのはもうすぐなんだけどね。これで安心できる。
He would have kept coming to check every day if he hadn't done this now. He would have spent his time needlessly worrying. Satoshi-kun looked very relieved indeed.
これならもっと早くに予約をしていればよかったな。
普通の人は欲しいと思ったら即予約します。
Yeah, that's why people
そういう
pre-order
思考
shit.
に至らないサトシ君はちょいと希少です。
It's so very fun to tease him. Those painful days seem unbelievable now. Satoshi-kun looked like he'd forgotten everything that happened up until yesterday.
でもありがとう。
Satoshi-kun held out his hand to touch my head. Was he going to stroke it? I felt my face reddening already. Even before he touched my head, I felt tingly, remembering the last time. I didn't care about the murder or whatever else happened. As long as Satoshi-kun had his freedom, everything would be alright. I'd be as content as we could live happily from today onward. Or I'd be content as long as we could live happily from today onward, excuse me. But Satoshi-kun's hand never reached my head. I slowly opened my eyes, only to realize that the situation had drastically changed. What happened? There were 4 men in suits blocking our way. It looked as though they'd been waiting for us to exit the toy store.
どうもどうも。
This doesn't seem good. The oldest of the 4 men stepped forward while smirking. I'd never met this man, but it looked like he knew both Mion and Satoshi-kun. He was probably a cop. I ran a search for information in my head, and found some right away.
こんにちは。北条さん、園崎さん。いい雰囲気だったところを邪魔しちゃって実に申し訳ないです。
Remember when I butchered the Sonozaki name? This must be Kurodo Ueshi, the cop who's investigating the series of mysterious deaths. He thinks that the Sonozaki family is behind all of the cases. In other words, he's an enemy of the Sonozaki family. He has deep connections with other investigation divisions in the police force and likes to nose around the businesses in the area. He annoys the Sonozaki family enough as it is by interfering with its Yakuza business, let alone his suspicions on the series of mysterious deaths. Naturally, as the family's successor, he's not a welcome figure to Mion Sonozaki. I tried to imagine how Sis would react.
ありゃ、大石さんですか。お仕事ご苦労様です。大の大人が4人も揃って、おもちゃ屋さんに何かご用で？まさかお人形さん買いに来たってわけでもあるまいに。
I know what they want, and it's not a toy. And it's probably not me either. They want Satoshi-kun. I took a look at Satoshi-kun. He seemed a bit uncomfortable. The other 3 cops loosely surrounded us to prevent our escape.
北条さん、実はですね、ちょいと伺いたいお話がありまして。
何それ？任意同行ってやつ？サトシ君、こんなのに付き合う必要ないよ。行こ
I pushed on his shoulder, but he just stood there looking pale and bewildered. Bewildered? No, he actually looked resigned. Then I recalled Sis's mistake. It's obvious that he killed his aunt from the circumstances. You don't even have to look at the crime scene. How could Mion have failed to create an alibi? That stupid Mion must have spoken to the police without making anything up at all. She must have not told them that she knew where Satoshi-kun was. If she hadn't done anything, the villagers wouldn't work to help her. It was just a matter of time until the police uncovered Satoshi-kun's complete lack of an alibi. The police were trying to corner him and lead him to confess. I looked at Satoshi-kun's face once again. He looked like a dead man. He probably didn't know he could refuse to be interrogated. If he was taken to the station and grilled by Ushi, he'd confess in a minute. Somebody had to protect him. Nobody had ever been there for him. I had to step up now. Okay, well hold on a second before we invert all the colors and shit. Like, what if, and I know after like chapter 3 and all of the parallels that we've been seeing here in chapter 5, what if Satoshi like never did anything? What if he actually was completely innocent and it's just we're kind of throwing the implication that he may be the murderer just because of everything that went down? What if he actually does have an alibi? What if he's just, you know, sick of everything? You know, there's just a lot of what ifs. I don't know. But I think Shion might be, you know, jumping the gun here. But how? Would it be possible to alter what Mion had already told them, saying it was a mistake? That wasn't going to work. If I had more time, I'd come up with an excellent idea. But I didn't have that much time at all. To pressure him, the cops were drawing nearer. Satoshi-kun must have felt intimidated. He might end up turning himself in due to the pressure while I'm stuck trying to come up with something. I have to do something now. I have to say something. Otherwise, Satoshi-kun might give in. I have to save him. Ushi drew nearer. Satoshi-kun fell back. It won't take much time. He just said it. He just said he wouldn't let him out if he caught him now. Satoshi-kun, don't give in. If you give in now, everything you've been working for will be ruined. What the fuck kind of noise was that? Satoshi-kun looked like he was at his breaking point. Ueshi was clearly aware of it. Ueshi smirked and held out his arm to grab Satoshi-kun's shoulder. I felt electrified when I saw that. That hand shouldn't be allowed to touch Satoshi-kun. The moment Ueshi touched his shoulder, he'd give in. He'd go to the police station and confess everything.
Satoshi-kunにアリバイがあるか知りたいわけですよね。
Ueshi turned his face toward me. His hand left hanging in the air. I wasn't very prepared for this. I just had to stop Ueshi no matter what. I only needed to gain some time. It didn't really matter what I said.
そうですよ。北条聡さんのアリバイが知りたいんです。私たちの捜査がまずいからなのかな。犯行の時間帯にどうしても北条さんのアリバイが見つけられないんですよ。仕方ないから恥を忍んでご本人に直接そのあたりをお伺いしようかと思いましてね。
そんなの本人に聞く必要ないです。私がアリバイ証明しますから。
ありゃ、そりゃほんと。なら助かるな。あの晩園崎さんが神社にいてお祭りの最後まで過ごしていたことはすでにあなたからも聞いているし、そのあなたがそこで北条さんとも一緒だったと言ってくれるなら一番楽なんですがね。でもあんた、以前そのあたりをお聞きしたとき、北条さんのことは一言も言ってませんよね。実はいましてって、今頃おっしゃるおつもりで？
I have a really bad feeling about this.
祭り会場の誰一人、北条さんを見ていないのに、あなただけは見ていたとそうおっしゃるおつもりで？
そうです。私と一緒にいました。それで十分です。
あなたが仲良しのお友達と終始一緒にいたのは分かっているし、私も会場で実際にお見かけしています。それでも一緒にいたとおっしゃるわけでなははははは。そいつはちょっと苦しくないん？
Ushi approached me with a creepy smile. Was he teasing me because my excuse sounded funny? I didn't think so. He was frustrated due to being interrupted when he was about to catch a... fucking me dying. When he was about to catch a big fish.
祭り会場でずっと一緒に遊んでたのに、すっかり忘れてて今頃になって思い出したと、そうおっしゃるおつもり？園崎美音さん。
I did get a little scared, but I couldn't stop myself. I could save Satoshi-kun if I revealed my real identity. I was aware of the risk. Grandma would certainly capture me if I revealed it. I didn't think of the consequences after that.
っていうか、私ミオンじゃないですし。
Oh ho ho, here we go.
だからもともと綿流しになんか行ってません。
あ？
サトシ君とは綿流しの晩は沖宮のファミレスでずっとおしゃべりしてました。エンジェルモートって店ですので、どうぞ店長にも確認を取ってください。
Ushi was still smirking, but he apparently felt confused.
あんた、何を言ってるの？あんたミオンじゃないなら誰なわけ？
園崎、シオンです。ミオンの双子の妹です。初めてお会いしますね。こんにちは。
Ushi looked perplexed, like he didn't believe what I'd said. He frowned.
園崎美音さんに双子の妹がいたなんて初めて知りましたよ。あんた、大人をからかってんの？
No, we were doing that before this moment, actually.
からかってなんかないですよ。どうぞ戸籍でも何でも調べてみてください。それとも、お姉を呼んで二人で並んでみせれば信じます？
All the cops looked bewildered now.
園崎、シオンさん？
はい。シオンですが。
あんたにもちょっと来てもらってもいいですかね？あんたが園崎シオンさんで、北条さんと一緒におられたって言うんなら、あんたにも話を聞かせてもらいたいもんです。
ええ、望むところです。お手柔らかによろしくお願いいたします。
I really have a bad feeling about this now. I don't know why. I just feel like everything is gonna crumble down now. Now that her identity is revealed and we're making up some doo-doo-ass bullshit. The cops gathered at their car and started discussing something. Looked like they never expected this to happen. I hope to be able to fake Satoshi-kun's alibi for at least a little while. It shouldn't be too difficult to talk to Sis about this and then forge up an alibi together.
サトシ君、何を聞かれても、エンジェルモートで私とおしゃべりをして過ごしていたと言い張ってください。私が何とかしますから。何を聞かれても、よく覚えていないとか。サトシ君なら下手なことは言わず、黙り込んだ方が無難かもです。
Satoshi-kun wore a startled expression. Though I was telling him something important, he had apparently decided not to listen.
サトシ君、聞いてます？ここでしっかりしないと、刑事たちの思うツボです。
He must be, or must have been feeling deceived. No wonder. I just confessed that I wasn't Mion, but her twin sister. I really had been deceiving him.
怒ってます？
なんで？
騙してて。
Satoshi-kun started laughing. I didn't know why he'd laugh, because he wasn't the type of person who would laugh in order to hide something.
たまに教室のミオンと話が食い合わないことがあったから違和感は感じてたんだ。やっとわかったよ。
怒らないでくれるんですか？騙してたこと。
Satoshi-kun looked puzzled. It was like he didn't know whether he should be upset about it or not. Or maybe he was only pretending to be that way.
はじめまして。じゃないんだよね。
はい、そうなります。
そっか。シオンってどう書くの？
詩を読むの詩に音でシオンです。
シオン。いい名前だね。
It is, isn't it?
じゃあお二人さん、すみませんが署までご同行願いますかね。粉末でよければコーヒーか紅茶かくらいは選べますよ。
Oh boy. I am really fucking worried. I don't know why. I'm excited, but I'm worried. Like, I know shit's probably gonna be hitting the fan soon. Notebook, page 29. Man, we're really just skipping through the pages, aren't we? And that achievement was absentee present. And there's a picture of a big-ass teddy bear. I wonder what that means. Either Satoshi-kun was smart or very lucky. Or maybe it wasn't him. The police found nothing at the crime scene to indicate his involvement in the murder. Yet Satoshi-kun was still the prime suspect. Considering his home environment, he had a strong enough motive. He had no alibi. The police had everything other than physical evidence. It wasn't surprising that Ueshi took a chance. He probably didn't expect me to step in. But what I did was too little to avert his suspicion to Satoshi-kun. Or of Satoshi-kun. Ueshi believed that Satoshi-kun did it. He was waiting for Satoshi-kun to fall apart and confess. That's what both Ueshi and I were thinking. But that hypothesis was destroyed later on. Oh, alright. I'll not talk about it now, but Ueshi's theory will be disproven and the police will be thrown into shock. A question comes to mind. That is, who saved Satoshi-kun? I can only think of the possibility that the Sonozaki family invented the culprit. See, I told you guys, he's not the fucking murderer. Satoshi would never do anything like that. Even so, it really does seem like he would really do something like that. The cops were smart enough to separate us during questioning. Ueshi didn't come to talk to me. His aim was Satoshi-kun and nobody else. I got a young cop who just talked about ordinary things. He must have been trying to ease me into the interrogation. When I realized that, the clumsy way he spoke began to frustrate me. Is Satoshi-kun alright? I didn't think Ueshi really bought my testimony. He must have been trying to get Satoshi-kun to confess in spite of that. All I could do was pray that he'd keep quiet. The phone on the desk rang, and the cop picked it up quick.
はい、熊谷です。はい？ああ、そうですか。わかりました。すぐに。
He hung up and told me somebody had come to retrieve me. Looked like Satoshi-kun had to stay. Were they going to continue the interrogation just because he had nobody to pick him up? Although maybe I should have been worrying more about myself. The hag had probably heard about me now, since I revealed my real identity to the police. I couldn't hide any longer. I was going to receive some sort of punishment. I had no idea what she'd end up doing to me. The degree of punishment for a traitor is always severe in the world of the Sonozakis. The punishment must be carried out. If it's to protect the family's reputation, it's carried out no matter what. Maybe I should kiss my pinky finger while I still can. This isn't the Yakuza, even so we have like a bunch of connections to them, so yeah, we're probably going to say goodbye to our finger. I asked the young cop just in case.
ねえねえ、アメリカなんかでよく死刑囚が死刑廃止の州で捕まると引き渡さないでくれるっていう話あるじゃないですか。
ん?
Maybe it was too difficult for him. He just looked puzzled. A glossy black car was waiting for me in front of the police station. A few men from my dad's office bowed to me.
シオンさん、ご無沙汰しております。
葛西は
Kasai had been helping me ever since my escape from the school. They wouldn't allow him to walk free.
お姉はどうしてるの？何か言ってる？
私たちはシオンさんを本家へお連れしろとしか言われていませんので、詳しくは本家でお尋ねになってください。
After saying that, he escorted me into the car. A man sat on either side of me. Obviously, they didn't want me to escape. Thinking of Satoshi-kun, I looked back at the police station. Hold on tight, Satoshi-kun. I'll grin and bear it too. The car started off roughly. It was never a good occasion when I went to this house, except when Mion and I were really small, oblivious of what the Sonozaki name meant for us. I'd been here only when I had to attend boring family councils. The car parked behind the house. Traders aren't allowed in through the main gate. I got out of the car. It looked like Sis would be the only person to receive me. I almost spoke to her casually, but her cold gaze froze me before I could.
お久しぶりですね、シオン。新年以外に会えるとは思いませんでした。
It gave me the chills to hear her greet me in that cold manner.
ミオン姉様こそ、ご機嫌麗しゅうございます。新年以外にお顔が見れて、3問くらいの得を感じます。
I responded, trying to sound likewise.
当主は大変ご立腹ですよ。どう釈明されるか見ものです。私がするような釈明なんて別にないですし。
I had no excuse. I'd escaped from the school solely because I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it there, and that was all.
シオン、来なさい。皆待っています。
Mion escorted me, and the others followed. We went to the garden, not into the house. As we passed through the huge yard into the woods, I realized where she was taking me. When we were little, we were told to never go near these woods. I had a vague idea of what was in the back of them. I had heard that there was a hidden entrance to the underground torture room, where they used to punish the enemies of the family. The more hideous rumors I heard about the family, the more credible those rumors seemed. Well, I wasn't completely certain about any of that. I'd never expected to see the torture room for myself. We came to a concave clearing in the middle of the woods. I saw a metal door at the bottom of it. The door reminded me of a bomb shelter.
これが噂の地下実験室ってやつですね。
I was surprised to hear my own voice. My voice was trembling. It made me realize that I was more scared than I thought. Nobody answered my question. The very air felt tense. According to the family rules, one of the twins must be eliminated. Was I finally going to be eliminated? I don't think so. I mean, we're still in the beginning of this goddamn game, at least I'm pretty damn sure. I realized I had been underestimating my punishment. I hadn't been aware of the real terror until now. I just thought I was. Beyond the steel door, the air had an intimidating smell. This really was happening to me. I shouldn't allow myself to give in to fear. I felt like saying something rude, but my lips were dry, and my fingers were fidgeting. I was escorted through the narrow hallway and down a few sets of stairs. There I saw another huge steel door. So this was the place. It was a spacious and... What the fuck happened to the sound? Utterly odd-looking room. I don't think that was right, hearing that little static, unless that was just me. Oh, nope, I'm hearing it again. Maybe that's a... I have no idea what that is. The room had two sections that looked completely different. One side looked like a lounge. I saw several high-ranking members of the family council sitting on the cushions there, looking expressionless. The other half was tiled as if in a large public bath. That was already puzzling enough. And there were those things. To be honest, they had captured my attention from the moment I arrived. I noticed them even before I saw the lounge and tiled space. I just didn't want to accept that they existed. I couldn't stand straight. I almost dropped to my knees. But I couldn't. Two young men had been holding me by the arms since I got here. There were oddly shaped things hanging from the wall. I was just refusing to recognize what they were. I knew exactly what they were called. I see. I understood that those eerily shaped objects were torture devices from hell. Hello. The hag sitting at the front of the lounge intimidated me in a horrid voice. She kept cursing me for a little while, but she was so incensed that I could barely tell what she was saying. I knew what she was trying to say, though. The hag was willing to forgive my escape from the school, but once I revealed my identity to the police, she had to step in. Since I had disobeyed the family rule, she as the leader was forced to punish me, alright. Moreover, there was one thing that bothered her more than anything else. The fact that I covered for Satoshi-kun. The Hojo family had been seen as traitors to the village ever since the dam conflict. Satoshi-kun is still considered one of them. She couldn't accept that I was connected to him. To me, this was a bit unexpected. I had escaped from the school the hag had put me in, all the while I'd believed that was what she was upset about. But in fact, she said that she was the most uncomfortable with my connection with Satoshi-kun. I couldn't believe this. Of course, I knew that Satoshi-kun's family was persecuted for their betrayal, but I didn't think that Satoshi-kun was also burdened with that responsibility.
そんなの、サトシ君関係ないじゃないですか。サトシ君の親はわかるとしても、サトシ君個人には何の責任もな。
So is the music supposed to just be a static mess? Like, you guys are hearing it too, right? Is it just static at some points?
しゃあらしいわ。
Alright. The hag interrupted me with a shout, which made me cower in fear. She continued slandering the Hojos and said that Satoshi-kun was a cursed child. I started feeling pissed off. What did he do to deserve this? What was he being blamed for? It was too late when I realized I'd said that out loud. The hag looked furious. I'd obviously upset her. I decided to repeat myself to make it very clear how I felt.
ばあさん、あんた何言ってんの？黙って聞いてれば言いたい放題。
なんばねすったら口の利き。
やかましい！しまいまで聞きなよ、バカ野郎！
Damn. I shouted loudly to silence the hag.
だいたい、あんたはサトシ君の何を知ってるの？
Man, we're just going all
サト
out.
シ君のことをよく知りもしないくせに、まるで彼を害虫みたいに言い捨てて。サトシ君がどんなにいい人か、私はよく知っている。彼が北条だからいけないの？ばっかみたい。時代錯誤も甚だしい。園崎の私が北条のサトシ君と一緒にいたのがそんなにも不愉快なの？くったらないくったらない、ばっかみたい。こんな安っぽい色味釣りを自分で体験できるなんて思わなかったな。
My voice became hoarse from shouting. My face was messy with tears. Even so, I didn't feel like putting a stop to my emotional explosion. I was all too aware that I was doing this just to overwhelm my fear. The hag was glaring at me while heavily breathing. I glared back at her as fiercely as I could. Eventually, I realized that her sticking point was my relationship with Satoshi-kun. She wasn't only upset that I had a mere connection with him.
そっか。ミオンがそういう告げ口をしたわけか。
It was as though Mion was wearing a mask. She didn't budge under my penetrating glare. That was what the hag excuse me, that was what the hag was really unhappy about. The fact that I was in love with Satoshi-kun.
確かに私、自分が園崎家だとか、サトシ君が北条家だとか、そんなの全然興味ないし、園崎家のメンツがとか、世間体がどうとか、全然関心ありません。認めますよ、認めます。私は北条サトシ君が好きです。彼のことが大好きです。それっていけないこと？人が人を好きになるのに何か理由が必要？
I could see the relatives shaking their heads in turmoil. Among them I saw my mom. She must have been trying to protect me. But even she wouldn't look at me. Instead, she looked silently at the floor.
後ろのあんたたちも聞こえてるでしょ？私おかしいこと言ってる？あんたたちだってサトシ君をよく知れば、彼がどんなに素敵な男の子で私が好きになるのがおかしくないことがすぐにわかる。なのになんで相手の人格も知ろうとしないで一方的に。
Mion held out a hand to silence me. Then she slowly walked in my direction.
もう結構です、シオン。あなたの言い分と覚悟はよくわかりました。
Mion put her head close to mine and whispered.
シオンの覚悟はよくわかったよ。でもここまで言い切っちゃったら誰にももうかばえない。シオンがけじめをつけてみせるしかない。けじめ？なんで私がなんでそんなバカな。シオン。
Mion's face turned cold again, and she calmly told me.
あなたの言う個人の理屈は多分正しい。でもね、あなたも理解していると思うけど、 ここはひなみ沢で、私たちは園崎家なの。御三家の末席で、今や事実上のひなみ沢の筆頭家。そしてあなたは仮にも、園崎家次期当主である園崎美音の双子の妹。それが、
I interrupted her.
あんたとは、こっちに帰ってから、どうもそのあたりの話が食い合わないですね。大人の事情みたいなことばっか。ひなみ沢？園崎家？だから何？私はそんなの全然興味な。聞きなさい！
Mion interrupted me just like I did her.
シオンは今日まで沖宮で生活するにあたって、どれだけの人の世話になってる？
Chills shot through my spine.
葛西さん、奥の牢屋にいる。なんで葛西が？
I knew why, of course. The moment I got caught, those who helped me were destined to meet the same fate. We were all subject to the punishment of betrayal. Maybe my punishment would be lighter than what they'd be going through. Kasai and Uncle Yoshiro must have been treated much worse than this. Everybody who helped me was falling victim.
シオンがどういう目にあっても、シオン本人は覚悟があるからいいだろうけど、お世話になった葛西さんや吉郎おじさんがどうなるかまでは考えが及ばない？
My head rapidly cooled down. My aggression was all used up. I should be able to bear whatever punishment they'd bring on me, but I resented the fact that I'd be putting the people who supported me at risk.
シオン、ばっちゃんに謝って、けじめをつけてみせれば、シオン一人だけの話で全部済む。誰にも迷惑をかけない。でも、ミオン、私、間違ったこと言った？そんなにも悪いことした？
The moment Mion learned that I wasn't willing to apologize, her expression turned cold again. She turned her back to me and returned to the lounge. I talked back to the hag in a really harsh manner. I told her that I didn't do anything wrong, yet I had involved many people to who I owed so much. It went without saying, this was my responsibility. I was the sole person to blame, and no fault lay with them. Yes, Kasai and Yoshiro-san were blameless, just as Satoshi-kun was. But then, as if she read my mind, Mion turned around and gave a slight nod. It was possible that something was going to happen to Satoshi-kun. On top of Kasai and Uncle Yoshiro... That can't happen. Satoshi-kun, I mean, nobody else should be punished. Please forgive them.
何ですか、シオン。
Tears rolled down my cheeks. I no longer cared about my pride.
ごめんなさい。私が間違っていました。許してください、当主様。
I should have said what the hag wanted to hear. Yet she still looked unsatisfied. Maybe that wasn't too surprising. I had just denounced her so badly in front of the relatives. She wouldn't forgive me so easily. Just then, Mion spoke as the successor.
では、シオン、どうやってけじめをつけるつもりです？けじめって、どうすれば？
Nothing could be scarier than being told to pay up while standing next to horrid-looking torture devices. I was completely terrified. I couldn't move from trembling. Mion saw that and whispered to our grandmother. The hag nodded. Mion summoned some young minions and gave them an order. They removed one of the torture devices hanging on the wall, then set a table in front of me and put the device on top of it.
何？これ。爪を剥ぐための道具です。
Oh no.
使い方はわかります？わかるわけないでしょ。
I shook as I stared at the tool. It looked like a giant nail clipper. Well, it's kind of what it is. You probably put the parts that look like a beak between your finger and fingernail, pulling them apart if you squeeze the handle. The chills ran up and down my spine when I imagined that.
爪1枚ずつで、シオンがかけた迷惑のそれぞれのけじめとします。園崎シオン、どの指でも構いません。自らの手で、3枚の爪を剥がしてみせなさい。
We have to do it ourselves? Oh, that's worse. 3. One for Kasai, one for Uncle Yoshiro, and the last for Satoshi-kun. It was a fairly reasonable number.
本当にそれで他の人は許してくれるんですか？約束して。私がちゃんと自分の爪を剥げたら他のみんなは許すと約束して。
これはあなたのけじめであって取引ではありませんよ。この方法が気に入らないなら。
やるから待ってよ。やるから。
I put the device on my little finger while shaking badly. If my fingernail were shorter, excuse me, it would have been harder. The metal beak captured my little finger beautifully. The subordinates then stabilized my left hand with a different restraining tool. That seemed reasonable because my finger would slip out if it weren't restrained like that. As the subordinates buckled up the leather straps, I realized that this was really happening, and there was no escape. Somewhere in my mind I'd been thinking that they might forgive me after just the gesture alone. I shouldn't have been so naive. The emotions I'd been holding back appeared in the form of tears and kept rolling down my cheeks. It was like my feelings were being squeezed out until the very last drip. Something even more horrifying followed this. It was the silence that awaited my next action.
どうするの?
One of the subordinates pointed at the handle and told me to either squeeze it or hit it. He recommended that the latter would be easier to make it quick. Nobody said anything after that. There was nothing to hear but the sound of my sweat dripping to the floor. The onlookers were staring at me silently, waiting for me to execute my punishment. Both the hag and Mion, they were also anticipating it. I could refuse, but that meant I wouldn't be paying up. This punishment exists to offer payment in exchange for the safety of those who helped me. If I refused, they would suffer. I don't think we're gonna be saving anybody here. I think we're just saving our own ass from doing this. I started breathing heavily. I knew that if I did this, the others would go free. This was, if you thought about it, quite a good deal. If it weren't me, it wouldn't just be 3 fingernails. If it were Kasai, he'd have to sacrifice his little finger or something even worse. I knew that. It was my selfish desire to get away from that school. Why did Kasai have to suffer because of that? I knew that. Why did Uncle Yoshiro have to suffer just because he provided me with a job? Oh, come on, do it already. I knew that the hag and the other relatives still hated the Hojos, so I didn't know what they'd do to Satoshi-kun if I didn't do this. Would they bring Satoshi-kun here and tell them to do the same? Would they tell him to remove his fingernails in exchange for forgiving me? Come on. He'd do it. He'd sacrifice himself with no hesitation in order to save others. My sweat dripped onto the table through my nose. I'd do it, yes. It was only 3 fingernails. It might hurt a lot, but I wouldn't die. The fingernails would grow back. It wouldn't even leave a huge scar. I shouldn't be afraid. The punishment was minimal because of me, because it was me. If I refused to do this, the others would be punished much more severely. I couldn't let that happen to Kasai, Uncle Yoshiro, or Satoshi-kun. I was the only one who should be punished. So I just need to bear, or I needed to bear the pain. I wasn't just breathing heavily anymore. I was also moaning faintly, ready to scream at any moment. That's right, make it quick. This wasn't torture, so I didn't have to prolong the moment of pain. I should do it in one swift blow. That way my pain and fear would be minimized. I raised my right arm. Quickly. The pain would be lessened if I did it in one stroke. It'd be much more painful if I messed it up. I held my breath. I felt as if my body was frozen. I was choking. The chills crept up my spine. Don't be afraid, Shion. Fingernails are just a tiny fraction of the whole body. Just 1 square centimeter. I could do this. I could bear it. What is with that static? Is that me, or is that like the game? Am I plugged in all the way? Yeah, I'm plugged in all the way. I guess it's maybe the music that's kind of coming up again. I smacked my right hand onto the handle of the device. I sensed the noise through my body instead of through my ears. At the same time, I felt a pain I'd never experienced before. A moment later, the pain pulsated through or with my heartbeat. I clenched my teeth. I felt like my teeth were cracking. I tightly shut my eyes until my eyeballs got squeezed up. The pain wouldn't fade. Rather, it swelled with my blood pressure. I felt as though it was bloating like a balloon. Timidly, I opened my eyes. I found that my little finger wasn't really drenched in blood. It was bleeding, but not much. Certainly not enough to explain how much it hurt. My fingernail was open, just like the hood of a car. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was overwhelming. It occurred to me that I'd only done one out of 3. Did I have to repeat this 2 more times? Did I have to remove the nails from my ring and middle fingers as well? I looked at the hag and Mion begging for mercy, but they were just silently staring at me, as if the show had only just begun. I saw no hint of mercy in their eyes. They wouldn't be changing their minds. Since they said 3, it had to be 3. They wouldn't forgive me until I removed 2 more fingernails.
ミオ、これで許して。あのね、これ本当に痛いの。ほら、私の顔を見ればわかるよね。本当にさ、痛くて。
Mion answered, still wearing a cold look.
シオン、もう無理。
She didn't mean that it was sufficient. What she meant is that the others would have to take the remaining punishment if I didn't. I knew that. I really did know.
やれるよ。こんなの全然楽勝だって。この冷血どもが。こんなの怖くない。こんなの痛くない。
I quickly moved the metal beak and set it on my ring finger, and smacked it with no hesitation. Instead of making it quick, maybe I was just rushing out of fear. I'd messed up. The torture tool had clipped just the tip of my fingernail. The pain, however, was equal. I couldn't believe I'd only chipped it. Did I have to do it again? Did I have to continue removing the nail from my ring finger? That much pain again? Again?
シオン。
やだ。
I couldn't bear it anymore. I started crying shamelessly.
もうやだやだ。もう無理なの。本当に痛いの。こんなの怖くない。こんなの痛くない。ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい。謝りますから許してください。ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい。
They didn't seem to hear my voice. I felt as though there was an invisible barrier between us. They showed no mercy. They were just here to witness this ritual. So rather than sympathetic, they looked amazed by my screw-up. Mion walked up to me and whispered to my crying face.
シオン、あとちょっとだから頑張って。
やだやだやだやだ。本当に無理。本当に痛いの。痛いの。
I mean, when you think about it now, we're technically half done. Damn, the audio is just gonna be fucked in this with all the static noise. So I guess it is just the music. It's weird. Mion shook her head and then signaled the subordinates. They came from behind me. They covered my head with something like a knit cap. It was a blindfold. One of them pinned me in a Nelson hold, restricting my movement. I couldn't overpower the guy behind me. Then I felt something strange on my left hand. The other guy was doing something with the torture tool. He put the metal beak between my ring finger and its fingernail. This is painful. In a lot of ways. My left hand was fixed in the restraints, so I couldn't put up much protest anyway. But even that the left hand was pressed down by his rough palms until it hurt, robbing it of the freedom even to tremble, they had no hesitation. Nice. It was made very clear to me how merciless people can be. Robbed of my vision, all I could do was clench my teeth against the pain assailing me. If there was anything I was thankful for, it was that he was well practiced and had ripped off both of my fingernails cleanly. Pain and screaming might induce narcotic chemicals in the brain. While screaming, I started losing consciousness. Wowzers. Holy shit. That was intense. I have no idea what's gonna happen here. I feel like they'll come up with some bullshit like, oh, you didn't do it right, therefore we have to sacrifice Satoshi-kun. I feel like they'd pull that sort of bullshit. Alright, well I guess we're out of that horrid place. Thank God. We'll end the long episode here. Apologies for taking my sweet time with recording. Just been a bit busy. Been, you know, just kind of chilling. A lot of new games coming out, so I've been kind of putting my focus on those. But no excuses, you know. We got Higurashi to play. But this was wild. Just a lot happened here. I really don't know what to think of the whole situation regarding the death of Satoshi's and Sotoko's aunt. I don't know. I mean, there was that bit where it's like, oh, Satoshi like ran out barefooted or some shit. Could he have been like controlled? Or could there have been that whole like, oh, there was another Satoshi? You kind of like how there was a whole nother Keiichi or some shit in chapter 3. There's a lot of possibilities given the events that we've seen in previous chapters. I just don't know what to believe. Maybe we'll find something out as we continue along, or at least I hope so. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching, and yeehaw.